remarks and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Outdoors People with me, C.W. Getz, and her, Maya Marzocchi. Good evening. It's Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. We have a really very comfortable, surprisingly, because 60s are usually a little chilly, but this is a very comfortable day today. 64 degrees Fahrenheit, sunny. And you know what? We actually went for a bike ride today. It was just amazing. What a beautiful day. Just a little breeze. That equates to 18 degrees Celsius for the rest of the world. I got to tell you, it was just a nice little breeze. And I got to tell you, I think that is probably the nicest day we're probably going to have till the rest of the year. Well, actually till next year, because I don't see this beautiful weather continuing much past maybe this weekend. So it'll be down in the 50s this weekend. Well, hey, Juan, what do you got there in while I'm on the subject? Maya, they had a kind of a bad storm roll into Brazil, at least where she's at in Americana, Brazil, knocked out the power. And she said, CW, I'm not going to be on the show tonight. I said, I can't do it. I said, totally understand. It's all good. I'll fly solo. But Maya, when you see the show later, hopefully, I know it's not nearly what it would be with you, but we're going to wing it here. So in her place, Juan, what do you got in, West Palm Beach, Florida there? What do you got for weather down there?
We are at 71 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's raining, so cold and rainy.
You know, you're not that much warmer than we are. That's surprising. I figured you'd be probably up in the 80s or something like that, you know?
Well, we were a couple of days ago, but it's been raining this last 3 days. It's just been raining nonstop.
That definitely makes a difference. So, well, you know what? Sunnier days are ahead. At least you're not down where Maya said. I think Maya said it was like 90-some degrees down there. It's just really, really hot. They're looking for a hot summer in their, in their neck of the world, so to speak. So, yeah. Well, tonight's episode of Outdoors People is brought to you by Rutabaga Paddle Sports, providing time on the water, campground views, making camping easier, by Duluth Pack, made in the USA since 1882, and by Jackson Kayak, pursuing joy through paddle sports. Tonight's episode is She Fights Back with my guest, Joanna Ziobronowicz, 39-year-old Polish jiu-jitsu coach, personal trainer, self-defense instructor, and yoga instructor. Joanna Ziobronowicz was also a bouncer while studying in London. Then in 2017, after working in the corporate world for 5 years, she made the decision to pursue her dream of a career in martial arts. Joanna has held the titles of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu World Champion, European Champion, and Grand Slam Champion from 2017 to 2018. She holds a BA in Tourism and an MA in Phonetics from University College London. At the moment, Joanne is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu head instructor at Carpe Diem Gym in Hong Kong. She's also the author of a women's self-defense book titled She Fights Back, Using Psychology of Self-Defense to Reclaim Your Power, which is scheduled to be released in July of 2024. Joanna will soon be launching a new series of courses and certification programs for women's self-defense based in London and Hong Kong.
Or the nose or the chin. So you're aiming for this chin elevation on them. Boom. All right, so let's start it out. I hope she didn't run away. Hi guys, I'm Joanna from Elevate Martial Arts and Strength. The wall, and we're gonna take 3 sprints. You guys wanna go first? Touch the wall. Way! Nice. Cheater! Control your personal space, okay? So you ready? I wanna hear it. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Ready, steady, go. Back off. And today we're doing a self-defense class for women to teach them the awareness tactics, de-escalation, and basic blocking. And the reason why I want to move around her, in self-defense, we never go square. Because when you're fixated on the square, you don't see what's happening around. And you don't recognize where's an exit route. I'm going to start wrestling in a moment. I can see it. All right. It's absolutely crucial for every woman to know how to defend herself, and also just to be aware of the surroundings, of potential threats, and what can be done in dangerous situations. So you're just going to block from inside. 1, 2, like this. So she goes this way. That's it. Here, and then the other side is going to be, that's it. At the same time as I block, I'm going to use offense with the right hand palm. So the palm is going to go upwards. So start really slow. So you go slow motion. 1, 2. Nice one. Right in the jaw. We're running every Sunday at 10 o'clock. It's a 1-hour class and everyone is welcome. We call it bear hunt. So either holding from the side, from the back, okay, to take me away, or even if you're thinking about close distance, going for things like the chokes. Great opportunity for any female to come, whether a teenager or an adult. So I put the pressure on and now I have to strike. 1, 2, good. So try to use making sure you're not going to fall to the floor. Right. Yeah? See us next week for more.
Wake up.
With that, welcome to the show, Joanna.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow, that video was amazing. Thank you for this nice introduction.
Glad to have you here. That, you know what, that was an awesome video. And when I first saw that, I go, yes, that just right on target, man. That was phenomenal. Who put that together for you, by the way?
I was actually a colleague of mine working at that same gym in London that put that together. So they have a video production company, and so they actually specialize in martial arts. So they video a lot of martial artists.
Let's give them a plug. What's their name?
Fight Sports Production.
There you go. Absolutely, yeah, and really nice video. So first, I'm going to start this off. I'm going to ask you here: was there something that happened in your life that motivated you to begin focusing on self-defense for women?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I actually was never interested in self-defense per se, but I was always fascinated by martial arts. So there were a few situations, few things that happened in my life that led me to the decision to focus a little bit more on self-defense. So I have to give you a bit of a background story to explain that.
Yeah.
So I started martial arts quite early on as a teenager and just pursued different martial arts. Actually expatriated to a different country at one point to pursue my martial arts career. And went to London to train with the Gracies to learn jiu-jitsu. And at one point, I decided to go back to uni. And when I decided to go back to uni, I obviously had to pay my student fees and decided to take on a job that required nighttime work and weekend jobs. So there weren't that many solutions that you can imagine to work in the nighttime. So we usually would be something between bartending and maybe doing security work. So since I already had some friends in the security sector, I just jumped on the opportunity to become a female security personnel and started working as a bouncer, essentially.
I'm going to interrupt you there and ask you this: when you go for a bouncer job, I mean, you have to audition for this and like beat the hell out of someone, or what? How does that work?
Yeah, so the notion of a female bouncer isn't necessarily to tackle guys, but I think the premise of having a female bouncer on site is solely to deal with other females in the club. So you can imagine regular nightclub is 50-50 ratio between males and females on average, maybe more, maybe less. So the idea behind it is that when a female customer has to be taken out of the venue, it's usually the female security that should be dealing with that person, or whether there's someone passing out in the bathroom, for example, which is quite common. It's a little bit better, less aggressive to have a female security to deal with that situation, to enter a female bathroom, etc. So for that reason alone, it became like common practice for bigger nightclubs to employ female security.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
so
makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
So when I started working in security, as you can imagine, there's also sort of different clubs in London, and some of them a little bit more dodgy, I would say. It's a very British word, by the way, meaning a little bit on the darker side of the spectrum. And some of them, obviously, a little bit more high street, you could say, membership type of clubs. So I've done security work in all the different clubs you can possibly imagine, coming from more sort of like the underground clubs, so where things were not really that safe, all the way to like posh membership clubs. So I've seen quite a lot. And obviously starting off as a female security dealing with females, later on, I was really keen and tempted to test my martial arts skills. So I was thinking if there is, any conflict or disruption in the club, I wanted to take part. I want to see if I can help out to deal with situations. And some of the times I didn't have a choice. Some of the times when a fight would kick off and there was no one else on side, or I happened to be right in the middle of it, obviously I'm the one that has to immediately take action. Wow. So in those moments, I kind of realized, wow, it's so different from the martial arts environment where you have, set of rules, you have a coach on side.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Even when you go into fighting world, you usually have a referee there, and obviously the rules will not allow for anyone to pull your hair, poke you in the eye, scratch you with the nails, which is not the case in a nightclub.
That's out the window. Yeah, anything goes, right?
Everything is outside of the window. Yeah. And the most important is the element of surprise, because you actually don't know when it's going to happen, like how, when, who's going to do what, and you're not even sure of the intentions of what the people are doing. A lot of times I would find myself in the middle of a situation where I had no clue what was going on. So a lot of times I was wondering, who's the attacker? What are they actually doing? Who are they even attacking? Because the situation is very disruptive. When you have a lot of individuals gather in a group, sometimes the time just goes so fast, and you're actually not sure, who to tackle first, or
I can imagine.
To address. So it's a little.
Or maybe there's multiple people that are being the perpetrators. Usually. Yeah.
So usually, what happens when there's a fight, you might have seen in videos or experience it in plain sight. A lot of the times, other people get involved, and once other people get involved, it gets really disruptive. And so you lose the plot, you lose the idea who actually is the perpetrator.
we have a term for that in the United States. We call it cluster, and I can't finish that word, but I think everyone knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, cluster blank. Yeah, it's it's kind of ugly.
You can put the beep in it.
Yes, you can.
Of course, it's live.
Right.
So in those situations, it actually made me realize that martial arts in themselves are, of course, amazing to teach certain techniques and, to teach you a lot of the basic stuff that you will be able to employ, but it doesn't really prepare you for the unexpected. So with that in mind, I was thinking of ways, how can I introduce a system of self-defense to vulnerable members of public like myself, to people who are not necessarily equipped with that type of strength, people who are smaller, a little bit more fragile and weaker, and how they can employ strategies to actually be a little bit more prepared for such situations, but also, how to train them and give them the tools, realistic tools, with which they will be able to go out in the street and feel a little bit safer.
Sure.
And a lot of self-defense systems, don't get me wrong, I don't want to trash talk about any particular self-defense, but a lot of them don't really address the problem of de-escalation or how a situation even is starting. They only address the physical aspect, which is, okay, I'm going to block, I'm going to do this fancy move, but actually they don't teach you how to, in the first instance, how to react, how to use your voice, how to use your distance control and things like that. So when I started studying, going a little bit deeper into the research, as a researcher myself, I love research. So I love using statistical data to figure out what are the common threats, how do they happen, who are the perpetrators, who are the victims, which space do these instances occur most likely, and what are the tools that I can give to people to help them understand how they can prevent threats in the first place. My first thought about self-defense was not per se physical, but actually prevention. And so I started putting some courses together. And at the beginning, people were not too interested in the psychology aspect of self-defense. They just really purely wanted to, learn the fancy moves because
Yeah,
it's
right,
cool.
right. I want to learn how to fight, man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Pretty much. And again, self-defense can be a very cool, fun, and engaging activity for a group, for example. And that aspect is also very, very extremely important. But equally, I, as an individual who's trained in martial arts and worked in security, I don't want to give people the fake idea that, okay, you know what, you've done a class, now you'll be able to defend yourself, because that's absolutely not the case. So as time went by and I would deliver self-defense workshops to corporates, to groups, I started realizing that what I was actually selling was purely the physical product, but actually not the psychology behind it.
Okay.
And so probably a few years ago, I think I started adding on the psychological component to my workshops. And I founded this organization based off in the UK. And this organization started providing courses for all sorts of groups, individuals, but also corporate companies, charities, etc. And I'm starting to focus more and more on prevention. So this really helps me to hone in the wider spectrum of the self-defense.
Right. Now, when you say prevention, we're talking about, I'm going to try to, how do I say, not alleviate, but I'm going to try to not engage in the physical aspect of this thing, self-defense. We're going to try to disarm this thing or disengage. Am I correct in that assumption? With the psychological end of it.
Yeah, so there are two aspects: a physical and psychological aspects of self-defense. Mm-hmm. And I do like to distinguish between the two, because I think it's important for people to realize that, hey, yes, I can teach you how to practice and how to perform the moves, but also I want to make them aware what is happening before that. So,
okay, go ahead.
You had another question behind it, or sorry?
No, well, I guess I'm thinking, can you give us just a little bit of an example of what maybe the psychological part of it might entail? Like, just paint us a quick little situation of going, here's what's happening, and here's where the psychological aspect can play a big role.
Yeah, where a lot of the times, and again, I'm going to talk about statistics. A lot of the times when you talk about violent attacks or violent behavior, it's usually something that can be prevented. And we know that from studies conducted at universities, for example, where students are usually, the most vulnerable group to fall into that spectrum. And we know that a lot of them have to do with coercion, manipulation, and peer pressure. So just knowing that, and knowing that we can educate the younger generation how to react to these behaviors could potentially eradicate some of these instances of sexual harassment or violence.
Okay. Interesting.
So
go ahead.
So this is where I'm starting the discussion actually about self-defense among young adults and students. And this is, I think, the group that we really need to address first, and we need to focus on that. And my job as an educator is actually go to universities and schools and to teach and give lectures on that topic, because not only this group is the most vulnerable one, this is the group that probably will go into their adult life with the tools or without the tools that they need to prevent such behaviors. So we know about over 50% of violent behavior against women happens in educational institutions, which includes colleges and high schools. So on campus, a lot of these situations happen, like I mentioned, due to peer pressure. So if we were to start educating the younger generation, either using some form of coursework or programs that will aim at prevention. Actually, there is one in Canada at the moment that's doing that, and they're mixing physical self-defense training with lectures and prevention. They talk about consent, they talk about manipulative tactics and things like that to prevent that, and also focusing helping young adults to understand their rights, their legal rights. And they have proven track record of actually improving the instances of harassment and violence against women, over 50% from our members.
Wow.
So that was a huge change of narrative there. So we know that these methods work, but they do need to be combined with some sort of psychological aspects as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Joanna, why jiu-jitsu? What's significant about that? Why did you choose that?
That is a topic I could talk about for a week. But
You're the Reader's Digest person, but yeah.
Yeah, sure. There are many different reasons for it, but I think the most important for me was the fact that it was what was the most fascinating for sure. And I think it's endless form of practice where there's no borderline or where it finishes. It's endless. If you can imagine like a set of rules or a set of technical details you can cover, it just never ends. So after about 20 years of practice, I'm still learning things on a daily basis, and I think that just stimulates my brain so much. I like it because it feels like a game of chess, but a fast-paced game of chess. So chess for me is a little bit boring because it's very slow, but jiu-jitsu is a human chess. This is what it's referred to, at least. It's very dynamic, but also you have to strategize quite a lot. So your technique or the style you apply will vary depending on the person you're training with, but it will also depend on your own individual preferences and strengths that you possess. So it's a sport which is extremely fascinating, and it's also a great form of play. And if people don't know what jiu-jitsu is, I usually tell them it's a form of wrestling, because it's probably one of the most I guess people connect wrestling to like some form of grappling and tackling each other to the ground. Not necessarily like jiu-jitsu, they don't really know what it is. So I just refer to it as a form of wrestling. And if you think about that, it's the oldest, probably recreational form of combat. Probably like about dating from 20,000 years ago, people already involved in some form of wrestling. If you watch animals in the animal kingdom, watch cats or even grizzly birds for that matter, they wrestle naturally. They're natural wrestlers. They do it as a form of play and also to hone their hunting skills. Okay. And I think for humans, it could be very similar in a way that you treat it as a form of play and fun experience, fun activity where you involve yourself physically, but also, it prepares you for the unexpected. So it prepares you for some kind of physical conflicts as well. So there's that interplay between having fun, but also learning survival skills.
Interesting. Wow. That's amazing. I love that. Well, listen, we're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more of Joanna Ziobronowicz right after these messages.
A few years ago, someone asked Rutabaga's owner, Darren Bush, "Hey, how long have you guys been selling boats?" Darren replied, "Well, we don't sell boats. We sell time on the water." Of course, that comes in all types. We help people paddle more safely with Rutabaga outdoor programs. We rent canoes, kayaks, and stand-up paddleboards. We sell and install racks to get you from home to adventure. Rutabaga's got everything you need to get you out on the water, like paddles, life jackets, dry bags, and clothing. Rutabaga Paddle Sports, on the web at rutabaga.com. Mention you saw this ad on The Camping Show.
It is time to go camping. Introducing Campground View's virtual tours. You can tour the campground, see the sites, see if they are available, and click to book your perfect spot. Hit the open road and explore the amazing places found in nature. We make it easy to discover, find, and book your site so that you can go have the fun and freedom you seek. Campground View's virtual tours make it easy and simple for you to see where you are going.
Duluth Pack is handcrafted for every lifestyle, making memories since 1882. In store at 365 Canal Park Drive or online at duluthpack.com.
We're one big family, a community of paddlers, and we want to make sure that everyone has a great time out on the water.
We are made right here in Sparta, Tennessee, USA.
This is where every Jackson kayak is born, built by hand with a focus on innovation.
We are Jackson Kayak.
We are
Jackson Kayak.
We're Jackson Kayak.
We are Jackson Kayak.
All right, we're back with Joanna Ziobronowicz here on Outdoors People. Joanna, I got a question for you. What is the scariest situation you've ever found yourself
in? There are many, I guess. In my adult life, I guess there was maybe one instance that I remember specifically that made me question what I was doing.
Oh, really?
And it was when I was still in the security sector. At one point, a colleague of mine came rushing in with a bulletproof vest telling me, put this on, we have a local gun coming. And I was wow, okay, that's a new thing to me. Like I've never done it. I never experienced that.
Yeah, that's serious, man.
That was quite scary. But I think like in my adult years, I think I became less and less scared of situations, especially like physical contact. I think it's mostly when I remember a teenager or a kid, that probably more so like a kid, that I was fearful of things. And I think one of the reasons was that I wasn't trained enough, or I wasn't taught enough how to act, how to behave, and even how to assert myself. So that was like a known environment wherever I was going, and I also felt fearful a lot of the times. But as time went by and I started training martial arts and studying, that changed the perspective. I was becoming a little bit more empowered and believing in my skills, that whatever happens, I wasn't really scared so much of physical contact. If someone's punched me in the street, I wasn't scared of that much as I was scared of just behaviors that were manipulative, or behaviors that were like coming from strangers. So these were like the type of things I would be scared of, more so than the physical part. So that's kind of interesting, probably, because it's not pretty common, I think.
It's not typical. Yeah, exactly. We're just talking about this, of course, when you're attacked, being attacked. Are there any patterns that can develop as a result of being attacked, say?
Definitely, especially for women. That my topic of self-defense focuses largely on women, so I'll be talking to that most of the time. So the usual patterns that develop are some form of trauma. So traumatic experiences actually can have an everlasting impact on a human psyche, and that involves a series of mental health conditions such as post-traumatic stress, anxiety, and depression. And it actually has been shown in studies that women are the group that it affected the most. About 78% of women have been experienced violence or sexual harassment in the past, actually developed PTSD. Over a third, I believe, started self-harming, over a third tried to commit suicide, and about 22% engaged in self-harm. So that statistic is it's massive. And when you look at it from that perspective alone, it gives you the idea of the impact that it carries with it. So I think we as a society, educators, are really responsible for collaborative efforts to try and educate people how to eradicate that.
Yeah, that's something. And real quickly here, I also heard that being attacked can affect you in such a way that you actually freeze. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. That's another aspect of self-defense that I mention in the course and in my book. There is something unexpected that happens, and even martial arts training doesn't always prepare you for those situations. And this is when the fight and flight happens. People usually refer to this as fight or flight. Scientists actually refer to this as hyperarousal, and it's a moment of unexpected, anguish and release of hormones. There's a little, like a tiny piece in our brain called amygdala, and when amygdala triggers the fight or flight response, it actually affects the body in such a way that on the one hand, it prepares us for combat because the blood pumps faster, the heart beats faster, like you're more physically prepared.
Right.
But what can also happen in that hyperarousal state is that your body goes into a state of freeze. So you're actually not able to speak, you're not able to talk. And this is very common amongst women. And I would say young adults as well. It can be a state of psychological freeze, but there's also the state of physical freeze, the one
where you can't,
hormones.
where you can't even fight back. There's like, you freeze, right? Physically, right?
That's it. So what happens in the body is actually that when your heart rate hits a certain beats per minute rate, you find yourself in a state where, like you said, like it's a bit like you feel frozen. And what happens with your motor skills in that moment is that they're very impaired, meaning that your body is only able to execute movements that are very simple in nature. These involve grand motor, what we refer to as grand motor skills, where fine motor skills, such as I would imagine like playing a piano, things like that, are largely impaired. And this is one of the reasons why I never teach any intricate techniques for self-defense, because simply they don't work in this state of hyper-alertness. So if you teach someone how to manipulate the wrist joint and make a series of fancy moves, your brain won't be able to actually execute these moves in a high stress level situation. And for example, if you see people going into a fight, perhaps like skilled people, you might have noticed that they perform differently under pressure, that their technical skill set is diminishing with the psychological pressure that they're experiencing.
Oh, wow.
And that's actually an example of that hyper alertness at play.
Wow. That's some amazing stuff. And I mean, at least I didn't, I would never think about that. I used to be a boxer. But I know your skill, your technique, sort of diminishes when the more tired you get. But I can certainly understand, the psychological aspect too, of what you're talking about. Well, listen, we got some photos to look at, Joanna, and when we come back. So we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more of Joanna on Outdoors People here right after these messages.
A few years ago, someone asked Rutabaga's owner, Darren Bush, "Hey, how long have you guys been selling boats?" Darren replied, "Well, we don't sell boats. We sell time on the water." Of course, that comes in all types. We help people paddle more safely with Rutabaga outdoor programs. We rent canoes, kayaks, and stand-up paddleboards. We sell and install racks to get you from home to adventure. Rutubaga's got everything you need to get you out on the water, like paddles, life jackets, dry bags, and clothing. Rutabaga Paddle Sports, on the web at rutabaga.com. Mention you saw this ad on The Camping Show.
It is time to go camping. Introducing Campground View's virtual tours. You can tour the campground, see the sights, see if they are available, and click to book your perfect spot. Hit the open road and explore the amazing places found in nature. We make it easy to discover, find, and book your site so that you can go have the fun and freedom you seek. Campground View's virtual tours make it easy and simple for you to see where you are going.
Duluth Pack is handcrafted for every lifestyle, making memories since 1882. In store at 365 Canal Park Drive or online at duluthpack.com.
We're one big family, a community of paddlers, and we want to make sure that everyone has a great time out on the water.
We are made right here in Sparta, Tennessee, USA.
This is where every Jackson kayak is born. Built by hand with a focus on innovation.
We are Jackson Kayak.
We are
Jackson Kayak.
We're Jackson Kayak.
We are Jackson Kayak.
All right, we're back with Joanna Ziobronowicz here on Outdoors People. Juan, let's put some photos up there and let's have Joanna tell us a little bit about each one and what we're looking at. There we go. Impressive photos, by the way, I must add.
Thank you. This is the one from World Championships in Las Vegas, where I took gold from a few years ago. That's one of the happiest moments in my life.
Yeah. You look badass there, Joanna. I got to tell you, man, you just look badass. I don't know how else to say it, but wow. I certainly wouldn't want to piss you off if, if I can. Wow. That's, you look tough.
I was definitely focused.
Yeah. You do look focused. That's a great word because you look very focused. No wonder you were champion. Yeah.
Yeah, we enter a state of a trance when we go into a fighting arena. Usually here, like, it's a moment of triumph, obviously. So this is when the adrenaline is going to wear off slowly. But there's just a moment of euphoria over there because we just realized there's a champion of the world. And
it's so
yeah,
cool.
that's big. That's big. This is the best few seconds of my life, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine. This is what, and coming from the boxing world, I mean, I can imagine what, people like Ali and Tyson are just thinking, I'm the baddest in the world. And that's just interesting too, because martial arts, you're pretty much tougher than anybody, in my opinion. I mean, you've got stuff, Yeah,
I think there's definitely an edge to it where you go through physical and psychological pain on a daily basis. So there's a lot of grinding in this sport, and a lot of preparation, a lot of sweat and blood goes into it. So I think that moment of triumph actually comes from the experience of having endured so many hardcore physical training sessions, and it's kind of like a culmination of that hard work. So it's extremely rewarding in that sense.
Very cool. Very cool.
This is a photo of one of my workshops, actually. So teaching self-defense and teaching people how to employ a leg guard. So as a boxer, you probably know that your hands act as a guard, but we also can use legs are a form of a guard where we not only ward off an attacker, but we also use offense. As you can see here, I use a foot post to strike the chin area, or to strike the face, if you will, with the heel.
Just going to ask you that. That's an offensive move then. You're just giving them like an uppercut, basically, right?
That's pretty much it. Yeah, coming right from the ground. So it is upside down.
That's how you knock people out, man, right there with that
Definitely
move.
Can. Definitely can. So in that sense, you see, like, the person on the ground isn't necessarily someone who has to be solely on a defense, but can be definitely on the offense at the same time.
Yeah. And there's no gloves on that foot like there are boxers.
Oh, no.
You're getting basically bone to bone right there. Well, a little skin in between that much. Oh,
that's it. Wow. Better than bare knuckle fighting.
Oh, my God. Yeah, that would hurt.
And this is the group of the ladies. I believe it's one of the first workshops I delivered in Richmond, where I was based for a few years.
Nice.
Just a nice group of ladies attending the workshop.
Wow. That's a pretty big group there.
Yeah, the workshops usually account for 20 people max, and I don't usually bring bigger groups because the engagement is great for larger groups, but then obviously we need to make sure that we can instruct each individual correctly. So that's probably the biggest group you'd ever get in a workshop.
I was just going to ask you how many people at max that you have in a group. Yeah, 20.
20 is a good number. And here again, we're having a discussion. So like I mentioned before, there's a lot of talk and also sharing experiences. It's extremely empowering. You can see this is a female group. It's very empowering for women to talk about their stories, individual experiences, what they have been through, how they prevented conflict or how they tackled situations. And some of these stories you hear are horrifying. It's whether to do with themselves or their friends or their family members. And so that sharing experience has a lot of value as well, because we discuss scenarios, how we can better prepare for situations, and also gives you an idea of how these situations happen too. And this is your closest community, is the closest community you will get, because all these ladies are local. So you will know what's going on in the neighborhood. So that's actually very valuable knowledge we get there right on site. So rather than just reading statistical data, you can actually hear stories from people, which for me personally is probably one of the most valuable tools.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
And here again is just an explanation of a form of control from the ground and how you can defend using the legs, using a frame, like you can see there's a leg frame in front, how to, again, deter an attack, but also later on how to take the person to the ground or strike.
For those of you who are just listening and not watching, I got to tell you, this picture is Joanna on her back. Her elbows are on the floor, but her palms are up. But I tell you, she's got her legs bent in such a position. Her feet look like they could damage you badly from the position that they're in. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't want to be that person on the other end of those feet. No way. Yeah. That's a very cool picture, by the way.
Thanks. It does change the perspective of what it means to be on the ground. I guess for a lot of people, being on the ground is the most vulnerable position to be in. But actually, this is why I like jiu-jitsu specifically. It just shows you it does not have to be such a defensive position solely.
Yeah, this looks very offensive on the ground. I'm like, wow.
Correct.
I love
Correct.
it. I love it.
And we are here also practicing breakaway techniques. So in cases of such as abduction or someone trying to pull you, drag you, we again teach strategies on how to effectively avoid these threats. So not necessarily trying to get out of there using strength, because that's not going to be a feasible solution, but rather using offense. So manipulating and adjusting your body in a way where you can strike. So that's the core message usually for such situations, because this is high level threat. This isn't a play in a club where someone grabs you for fun. This is a situation, I would say, that's high risk. So in those moments, you really have to employ strikes and offensive strategies.
Yeah, serious stuff. Here we go. This looks like a flip going to happen here. I'm telling you. I'm seeing an arm grabbing by Joanna.
This is actually one of my favorite exercises to start with, which is a simple a wrist manipulation. It's an escape from a wrist grab. And this is just to demonstrate how leverage can be powerful and used by a smaller person against a bigger opponent, and how using leverage can help you get away from situations.
Interesting. I love it. These are such good pictures. All right. Well, listen, we're running down about 6 minutes here. Joanna, I want to know real quickly, let's have you tell us a little bit about the new book that you're writing. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
So the book is going to be published next year. Like you mentioned, July 2024. We're starting marketing campaign for it. It's a book that is incredibly empowering for females, and I direct it to females, but also to educators and larger society, to come together to think about solutions, how we can help the younger generation, which is the one that's most vulnerable. And how to understand threats, the nature of threats, and preventative measures before we even start talking about using physical defense. So there's a lot of psychology in there, how to boost your confidence and self-esteem, which are probably the cornerstones of self-defense. Without having these tools, such as the awareness, the self-worth, you will not be able to vocalize probably your needs. You will not be able to assert yourself in dangerous situations. So we're starting the discussion from that point, where we ask the question: are you assertive enough to even tell the person no, to maybe change the dynamic from the social conditioning of a woman, where you meant to be kind and not rude, but actually be able to break what I call the good girl conditioning.
Right.
So to be able to say no in situations that require us to do so. Because a lot of the times people find themselves that they lack the voice, and it's the state of psychological freeze where you're not necessarily able to vocalize what you really want, and you go against your instincts. So a lot of the times when we talk about females, we talk about instinct and instinctual feelings about an individual. So if you really listen to that intuition, voice of intuition, a lot of the times it will save you from dangerous situations. So I talk a lot about that in the book as well, but also how there are certain cues for victimization, and studies that I quote prove that certain types of behaviors and even body movements can contribute to the fact of people falling victim to crime. So I really focus on, again, statistics, preventative measures, and how women can understand their body language better to be able to not fall victim to or target to attacks. So there's a lot of psychology involved. There's also certain strategies and behaviors that can employ in terms of physical contact and physical defense, obviously mentioned in the book. But overall, it is more of an empowerment tool for females to understand how they can better become more confident and in preventative measures.
That's incredible stuff. I mean, very, very, very deep. I mean, it's not just physical. There's a lot more to it than that. And
absolutely. I would say the physical part is about 10-15% of the book, and the rest is about mindset, confidence, feeling of self-worth, being able to vocalize and prevent threats.
That's such an interesting angle. I think that's gonna be a fantastic book again. And give us the title of that book again, Joanna.
The title of the book is She Fights Back.
Yep, and it says Using Psychology of Self-Defense to Reclaim Your Power. I think that is awesome. I mean, really interesting stuff there. I really appreciate that whole. So, Joanna, let's let people know where they can find you on the internet, online.
The best place to find me is go either directly to my website, www.womensselfdefenseuk, or go to my Instagram page, Joanna_Jiu-Jitsu. That's probably where I put most of my content out at the moment.
Very good. Very good. Well, listen, Joanna, we want to thank you for being our guest here, or my guest, I should say. Maya's not here, but my guest on Outdoors People. It was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. You're very, very interesting, very, how do I want to say, very successful person. And I'm just, I think that's amazing. You're awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a great pleasure being on the show. Thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate that.
You bet. Well, I also want to thank our sponsors for bringing you tonight's show: Rutabaga Paddle Sports, Campground Views, Duluth Pack, and Jackson Kayak. Tune in for next week's episode, How Do You Spell Freedom?, with our guest, Mina Erickson. This is CW Getz saying thanks for tuning in to Outdoors People. See you next week.